What's trending and what's really working right now in social media and online ministry? That's what we're going to talk about today. Are you ready? Because it's time.
You're listening to the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast, part of the TCD Podcast Network.
Hey, heroes, my name is Tom Pounder, and this is the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast. This is the podcast where I bring on ministry leaders and we talk about how you can do ministry more effectively in this very digital and online world. And today I've got my friend Aaron Magnuson on with me. Aaron is the co-host of Social Media Church podcast, the world famous Social Media Church podcast with Neil Smith. And they do that, but also Aaron has a ton of experience with online ministry, social media ministry, and he'll update you on what he's doing right now in addition to the Social Media Church podcast. But I'll let him tell you, not me. But Aaron is a great resource. He's a great person, and he's talking to a lot of communicators about what's working and what's not working in social media and online ministry. So I bring him on my podcast and say, what's working and what's not working? I want to know. Since you talk to everybody, tell me what's working. And so Aaron and I have a great conversation. We learn about his path to ministry and again, what's working and what's not working with social media and online ministry. So I'm really excited about the interview. But before we get into that, I do want to highlight the Church Digital. At thechurch.digital, the website, we've got a ton of cohorts, coaching, we've got a ton of blog posts, podcasts that are there, all designed to help you in your online ministry, whether it's digital ministry, regular online ministry at a traditional church, or whether it's metaverse ministry or VR ministry. We have encouragement for you today. So if you've never checked out the Church Digital, go to it right now. It's thechurch.digital. Jeff Reed started it. We've got a ton of different coaches and cohorts going on of really people who are in the trenches doing ministry right now who can relate to you and encourage you with where you're at. So go there today. We'd love for you to check it out and be encouraged today. All right, so without any further ado, let's get an interview right now talking to Aaron Magnuson. All right, with me right now is Aaron Magnuson. Aaron, how are you?
I'm doing so well, Tom. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast and getting to take our conversations from Twitter and bring them here into Zoom.
Yes, you're really active on Twitter, and I really like that. I can appreciate a good person who loves Twitter.
Yes, yeah, I do love Twitter. I know you love Twitter as well. I am active. I feel like I'm not as active as I could be. I'm trying to figure out how to, because I've been testing it, Tom, and you probably have tested this as well. Twitter only really helps me promote my stuff when I'm talking about Oregon State, and so I'm trying to figure out how to have my foot in both the sports lane, which I love on Twitter, as well as the ministry lane, which I also love on Twitter.
Yes, you and I fit in that very much. We love college football and sports, so we're tweeting about sports stuff, and then we also have that ministry connection. But okay, I'm going to just ask you to share about your life because I know about Oregon State and some of this other stuff, and why it's important for you. So why don't you just introduce yourself in case someone doesn't know who you are, and then we kind of go from there.
Yeah, happy to introduce myself. Yeah, so Tom has introduced me as Aaron Magnuson. That is true. Ron, since the Key and Peele video came out, I get that very frequently. And yeah, I went to Oregon State University. Starting in college is probably the best place to go. And did have the opportunity to play football there at Oregon State. And then I met my wife, who played volleyball at Oregon State.
Nice.
And actually stopped playing football after my redshirt freshman year because I was only a preferred walk-on, is what they called it. So, but I wasn't getting any scholarship money, and I realized that I needed to buy a ring. And so I needed to get a job. And so I stopped playing football and got a ring, got a job, not in that order. I got a job and then I got a ring, and which was great because then I was able to watch my wife play her last 2 years at Oregon State because volleyball season and football season are at the same time. And then was getting my degree in human development and family sciences. So I didn't go to Bible college. I didn't do anything that pertained to getting a job vocationally within ministry. But my last term, senior year, I had a lunch with my pastor, and he was like, "Hey, I want you to apply for this job as our community life director." And I was like, "Yeah, I have never entertained working in ministry, but I would love to work for you." And my journey, Tom, was football up until I stopped playing was like I grew up in a Christian household, so I've always had a relationship with Jesus. Never
Yeah.
rebelled against the church, never rebelled against Jesus, but Jesus was not like the Lord of my life.
Mhm.
Football and the pursuit of football was the Lord of my life. And so something spiritual happened when I gave football up as well, where I started prioritizing Jesus as the leader of my life. And I could make some arguments how he was really leading my life to leave football, to start my life with my wife, Megan. And so as I was coming back to the Lord, that's when I got baptized. I got baptized my senior year of college. I'd never been baptized before. And so some people listening to your podcast might say that I wasn't a Christian until that point. So I'll let you pick which
We
camp
don't
you're
get into those debates here. We don't get into them
in.
here.
I just want to start some Twitter conversations for you, Tom.
Right.
And so yeah, I had a different view on maybe what God wanted to use my life for. And my grandpa was a pastor. Actually, he was yes, he was a pastor, but he was also a church counselor. And in the later years of his life, actually a consultant for churches looking to do multiple leadership structures for their church. And so I was familiar with ministry, was familiar with what that looked like, and was just felt like that's what God had for Megan and I, and to go into. And so I did that for 5 years. That was at a church in Oregon, a small church of 300. We met in a middle school, set up tear down every week. And what that turned into, though, was not having a building, being the community life director, which my role was to build the community within our church, but then also build our church within our community, was to get on social media and create these digital places where we could stay connected throughout the week as a church, but then also have our church be connected to our community. And so my first week, I'll never forget, there's a lady named Heather on our staff who led worship for us. And she was like, "Well, why don't you just Google like social media church?" And we know what search result came up after Googling social media church. It was the Social Media Church podcast, hosted at the time by Nils Smith and Jay Cranda. And I just started listening to all of their content, everything. And they were talking about so many things that our church was not in a position to do. But what we were in a position to do was to build community online. Even though we weren't broadcasting our services, we weren't looking for a global reach. We were just trying to build community in digital spaces to gather together throughout the week. And so did that for 5 years. That kicked off a relationship that I had with Nils Smith and Jay Cranda. They were kind enough to respond to my Twitter DMs. They will both still do that today here in 2023. If you have questions, but I was trying to figure out how to like structure a social media team and like manage Facebook groups. And so that relationship actually turned into, I'd never met either of them in person, but there was an opportunity that both of them knew about in Southern California for me to become an online pastor. And they were both recommending that I be the one to take that role. And so I called Jay the next day and I said, "Hey, why do you think I'm qualified to be an online pastor?" Because it didn't seem like, that's not really what I had been doing. However, it turns out it was what I had been doing, in the sense that I'd been pastoring for 5 years, and I had also got really familiar with, I'd become a digital native, and understood YouTube, and understood tags, and understood all of the features of Instagram and Facebook groups. And he said, "Look, there's a lot of people that can pastor, but the unique part about the online pastor role, and this is, I know, true of your story as well, Tom, is having this experience to be able to optimize what's happening digitally. And he said, not every pastor understands that. And so you have both of those things. And so I would say that you're qualified. That was good enough for me. So I went down the path of applying for that job. And in 2018, moved my family down to Southern California, where we got to become online pastors for a church down there in San Dimas, specifically called One and All Church. And had a great time there, learned a lot of things, grew that online ministry, and then had an opportunity to move to Dallas, Texas to become the online pastor at Shoreline City Church with Earl and Onika McClellan. And most recently have actually transitioned out of that seat because I got an incredible opportunity to work with all of those same teams for different ministries at pray.com through a pastor success role. And so we work with the teams. I'm now working with the people and the leaders that I used to serve and sit in the seat of, and I get to do that at scale now. And so it's a really cool opportunity. An incredible opportunity to see ministry from the other side, but be familiar from my experience with the seats that I used to sit in. And on the side, what I started in Southern California, that obviously increased the relational equity between Jay Cranda, Nils Smith, and myself. And I started working specifically with Nils, became one of the co-hosts of the Social Media Church podcast. So Tom, it's really humbling for me to have seen the podcast that got me started in ministry, that I now get to contribute to that, to the larger community, helping other people start that journey as well when they do the Google search of Social Media Church. And so I'm continuing to do that in addition to working at pray.com. And it's just been a really fun season in my life professionally, and get to go on podcasts like this and meet. We haven't met in person yet, Tom, but I can't wait for that day. It is coming. But meet my friends that I've met online and continue to grow those relationships. So that's my story.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing. I didn't know that you had transitioned out of the online pastor role into pray.com. So that's really exciting.
Yes. So, yeah. That was a transition that's been just coming up in July, a year. So I guess so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I want to backtrack on some of the things that you said. Yep. One is San Dimas. Is that the same Sam Dimas that's in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
It is. It's one and the same. It's one and the same.
Okay, that's all I know about. I've been to California a few times, but like San Francisco, San Diego, I think Los Angeles one time. But San Dimas, I have no idea where it is. I just know that was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah, pretty hilarious. If you just drive east, of LA, you'll go through Pasadena and then you'll hit San Dimas. So
that's awesome. That is very cool. Well, and I will say, I love listening to you guys on the Social Media Church podcast. I listened to it as well when I was early on. I still listen to it. I love your updates on all the things that are happening. That's part of the reason why I have you on today, because you really do talk to a lot of great people, and you guys are talking about future tech stuff. You guys are talking about current tech stuff. You guys are talking about all things that will really help you in online ministers do ministry more effectively. Yeah. So to kind of get us started talking about things, I was kind of curious, what are you seeing right now as some of the cool things that are happening in online ministry? Some trends, if you want to call it that. Some things that are happening good right now, but also some things that you'll see on the future that you're really fascinated with.
Yeah, short form vertical video. If you haven't figured it out by now, it's everywhere and it's what everybody wants. And Snapchat obviously really kicked this off, and we really only experienced it in stories. But now TikTok has come along and really shown us how this doesn't just have to be, life updates of our food and what room we're sitting in, but it can be really creative and informative. And I think that's the unique part, Tom, that we're seeing is this short form vertical video now being adopted as Reels on Instagram. I don't know what they call it on Facebook. I guess it's a reel on Facebook too.
I think it's Reels too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Reels on both Facebook and Instagram. So Reels for Meta, and then Shorts for YouTube. And what we're seeing is that ministries like yourself, because Tom, you talked about this on the podcast when we had you on, and listen to that episode, because Tom is going to share his insights into what's going on. He's asking me now, but Tom's got great insights on the trends. What we're seeing is two things. One, those platforms want to promote that style of video. The consumption is high, it's short form, there's a lot of content being consumed at any given session, which ultimately increases the session length, because probably everybody listening to this podcast has experienced, where did all the time go? What have I been doing? Oh, I've been scrolling through short form vertical videos, watching them over and over and over again. And the second part I think about short form vertical video is it's informative. So some of it's creative and entertaining, but especially on TikTok, if YouTube is the king of long form educational content, you're going to YouTube. How do I do this would be a common thing that you're approaching YouTube with, whether that's like fixing your car or trying to use Chat GPT. TikTok is the short form expedited version of education. And I could not believe, and I still can't believe in 2023, how many people go to TikTok to learn how to do something, not to be entertained, not to, just scroll through a bunch of videos, but like, I mean, there was one person that I was talking to that's like trying to learn Mandarin through watching TikTok videos, because there's people that are doing like language teaching things on their TikTok channels. And so I say all that to say, Tom, we have an opportunity with short form vertical video to preach the gospel, to teach people about the gospel, and to do it in a way where these platforms, aka TikTok, I can't wait for Twitter to get in this game, but Meta, which would be Instagram and Facebook, and YouTube, are helping us promote. And that's something that you've seen, Tom, as you've shifted from just the long form rectangular videos to adding in, not replacing, but adding in the short form vertical videos, how much further in terms of views and engagement those vertical videos go. And so I just can't emphasize the vertical video piece enough.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating because just the other day I saw the CEO of Instagram. He shared on Twitter about how they do their algorithm, how it's not, this made up, but they talk about how stories is important, the feed is important, but Reels is up there as well. So if you want to get in people's algorithm, if you want to get into people, you got to be using these vertical formats, because that is really popular, and people, these companies want to invest in that area.
That's right. That's right. And I don't think there's anything special about recording a vertical video. It's that these are what the platforms want to help you evangelize. And we have an opportunity to ride that wave. And that's really what it is. These are social media platforms, and they're just tools. And they're tools that we get to use to better advance the gospel. And I would also say, Tom, the other interview that we did recently on the podcast was with a guy named Ben Bennett. And this calendar year, I say calendar year, this fiscal year. So since he started, I think he's been doing this for 8 or 9 months. He has seen, he's doing, if you've ever seen like Instagram, I'm talking to your audience, if you've ever seen Instagram preachers or TikTok preachers where they're doing like a gospel presentation, talking about like what somebody might be struggling with, and then giving them an opportunity to respond. If you've ever seen those videos in like 30 seconds, it's incredible how concise they can be. But what's happening and what they're seeing is that people are commenting and responding, and then he was leveraging bots to identify certain comments, like with certain keywords. So similar to the calls to action that we have from stage, it would be like, text this number, or raise your hand, or do this action to let us know that you just received Jesus. And so he's doing something very similar within his videos, and whatever that keyword is that he's using, a bot will go through and scan his comments and start direct message conversations with these people. And they interact with the bot for a little bit before they get siphoned into talking to a person. But he's got this whole system set up. He told us that he has seen 70,000 salvations in these like 10 months. Wow. From his content. He's posting 3 vertical videos a day. 3 videos every day. And he's just really dialed in and tailored this, but it's not the vertical video so much as it is the opportunity to get in front of people, and then also understanding what types of vertical videos are connecting with people. And it's catchy, educational, not just necessarily entertainment, but people, when they're in that scroll, Tom, they're looking for something. And when you're able to inject something in there that maybe snaps them out of this trance almost that they're in, of just like mindlessly, in a lot of cases, mindlessly looking to whatever they're looking for, which is what Ben was able to do. And so we just have a huge opportunity to be taking our sermon content, to be taking it's so simple, Tom. You just take your iPhone or whatever phone you have. I used to have an Android for a long time. And
thank God you converted. Thank God there is God out there. You converted.
I converted. I'm going to do a commercial break here. I converted, Tom. This is my conversion story. The reason I converted to Apple is also the reason I still hate Apple. And here's what I mean by that. I hate it that Apple grabbed the corner market on community so aggressively that there was actually communication that I was lacking in my life because I was not a part of Apple's ecosystem. And what I mean by that is, once I got an iPhone, I discovered how many more like random FaceTimes you get because it's just there, how many more group chats you're a part of because it's there. And so I converted to Apple because, well, for 2 reasons. One, that community piece, and which is why I hate it that I had to do that, because Apple has ruined community if you're not within the Apple ecosystem. And the second reason is I had shifted from, because Androids are incredible for customization. I had shifted from a place in my life from desiring customization on my phone to needing things to work when I needed them to work seamlessly every time. And Apple has also grabbed the corner market on that. And so it's just a different life stage. So I gained what I'm paying Apple for is increased access, is how I would talk about it. So I do have an iPhone. I do like my iPhone, but I'm an Android sympathizer, and I still hate Apple the way you do. I'm paying them. So anyways, I say all that to say, commercial break over. The accessibility that you have to be able to create original, I'm talking to the pastors now, original vertical video content without a team, without getting mic'd up, without a camera person or a multi-camera setup, to just record meaningful gospel presentations in a short, concise way, and create reels that's adding value to people's lives, particularly a younger generation that is starved to hear the gospel and meet Jesus.
Yeah, I really agree with you on this. And I'm glad you said all that you said, because I think when people think about getting on Reels and on TikTok, they're like, I gotta be catchy, I gotta be wearing this weird outfit, I gotta come at you like really crazy. But you don't. You gotta just go and present your real authentic self and share it. Now, again, you don't want to bore anybody with the gospel. The gospel is not boring, so don't bore them on your videos. But you don't have to be all this flashy, crazy person. You can just be sharing the gospel, and that can be really, really effective.
Yep, that's right. So you have an opportunity to do that, record vertical video, take vertical video from your sermons as well. The content is already there. That's the beautiful part about it. And then just ride this wave of the social media platforms that are trying to help push out vertical video.
Yeah, 100%. We've seen a lot of growth on our personal channel as well. Your interview with Ben, I have that one bookmarked, and I've been meaning to get to it, but I haven't. Now I'm really going to get to it.
Yeah, and I'll shout out Ben really quick too, Tom. In that episode, it's not just like, hey, look at me, look at what I've done. He breaks down the 7-point framework. Like he gives all the secrets away in the episode. So this is definitely something to listen to that will give you practical handles on like, oh, okay, this is the play he's running. And we're trying to tell as many people. And so I would say the overarching, you were going to ask another question, but the overarching thing so in addition to vertical video, the overarching thing that I'm seeing is this rise of digital evangelists that they don't have a church, they don't have a congregation, they don't have, I mean, dare I say, like, they don't have resources. They're literally just preaching the gospel. They're almost like street preachers, without the obnoxiousness or inappropriate, well, this depends on where you land. I'll say my opinion, the inappropriateness of like the bullhorn preacher on the side of the street. They're almost taking this approach and just leveraging the natural discoverability of this short form vertical video. And I didn't really understand that what Ben shares in the podcast is there's almost, I don't remember what his name is, but there's a guy who's trained up like 100 people to do this on social media. And so you're actually like seeing a systematized movement of people who are not just like, hey, I got TikTok famous. Like, they were trained and they're intentional, and there's actually a strategy for how they're evangelizing on social media. And I just think that that's so fascinating, Tom. It's this pivot that we've made where you don't have to go to, well, gosh, I'm saying a whole bunch of stuff here that might
keep on going.
You don't have to go to seminary to introduce people to Jesus in 2023, to disciple people, to present the gospel in a way that can reach thousands of people. You don't have to have a church to get that audience anymore. Now there's a place for church. Discipleship matters. Systematized discipleship matters. Resources behind discipleship matters. People driving by on the street needing a place to go, get fed, get clothed, orphans, widows, right? There's a place for the physical representation of church. But as far as the presentation of the gospel, there's a way to expedite that now that we've never seen before, in a responsible way that can lead to discipleship on the back end, where you can get a whole bunch of people exposed to your church and then leverage your church's resources to be able to disciple them once they've committed their life to Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I will say I don't encourage churches necessarily to be on Twitter. I think Twitter's great. I think it's fantastic, but churches don't have that kind of great impact on it. However, me as Tom Pounder, I have a great impact as that. So that's why we do these digital devotionals from our church, but then I also do some separately that are just straight from Tom Pounder. Yep. And I call them differently. I call them, and again, people, my role is, I feel like I have greater impact on places like Twitter because I'm able to share from Tom Pounder, not New Life Christian Church. Yes. You know, people are going to listen to me a little bit more because I'm just a regular Joe. So I think you're right on.
Yep. Yeah. And what you just pointed out, Tom, it's a both and, right? It's there's a place for what the church is, but you pastor, you church leader, you online pastor, you communications director, whoever's listening to this, have an opportunity to evangelize yourself. You're not evangelize yourself, evangelize Jesus, but you yourself have an opportunity to evangelize that doesn't require you hiding behind your pastor or your church, because you have unique things about you, right? Tom's not just talking about Jesus, but he's meeting people talking about all sorts of different stuff, baseball, movies, right. Old 80s references, right? Like
I love old 80s and 90s.
That's right. And there's people out there that care about that as well. And social media is such a beautiful place to blend all those worlds together. Very similar to if you were just in a market space or on a plane with somebody, or and that is something your church alone cannot wear or represent, that it requires you to represent. And the great news is all of those things can work together in synergy, but they're not replacing each other. It's all additive.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's awesome. And I strongly encourage it. I think it's great that guy has been training up people to do that, because I think we need to do that more and more as church leaders. We need to do that more and more, because it's online ministry is relational ministry too, you know. And so I'm building relationships online. And again, one of the things I love, and I can't wait for us to meet in person, is I love meeting my Twitter friends that I've been friends with for such a long time. when I actually meet them in person. It's like a celebration, you know?
It is. It is. Yeah, it's happened to me a lot of times, and there's going to be a lot of times in the future. And one of the things I like to tell people is I try to warn them, and it never works. It actually never works. I let them know that I'm really tall. And every single time I meet people, they're like, "Wow, you're taller than I thought." And I was like, "Well, I tried to warn you." But yeah, you can't get some stuff from the profile picture and from Zoom, but it makes it really entertaining when you meet each other in person for the first time. So I love that too,
100%.
Tom.
Well, tell me about something future wise. So something that's about, I know we're talking about AI, and if it's AI, then so be it. But what is something that you see in the future that's going to continue to take hold?
Yeah, I think it's what we've been talking about, not vertical video, but the latter half of this conversation of what Ben and his crew of people are doing in terms of a combination of doing what they can do, which is presenting the gospel, and then leveraging AI technology to start but not finish the discipleship process. And so when you're thinking about systems within your church, when you're thinking about systems online, the idea that you can have a bot that is consistently looking out for keywords, phrases, things that are being said, to driving that down your funnel through a direct message, and then positioning yourself to be able to actually have real humans that receive that. There's a real opportunity we have here to not just reach the masses with gospel presentations and seeing all these baby Christians starting to be born, but actually responsibly disciple them. And I think we have an opportunity as churches, and I know that there's going to be organizations that come out to be able to help come alongside churches to better do this. But we have a real opportunity to disciple. And so there's this evangelism piece that almost maybe in addition to the pulpit, but I would say maybe in some cases it's like, no, our evangelism is happening through our pastors and what they're doing online. And then our church services and our church is primarily about discipleship and feeding and growth. And of course, there's going to be discovery when somebody drives by your church and they're like, what's going on there? I'm curious about it, or I'm desperate. I'm at the end of my wits. I need to go to church. But I just feel like there's an opportunity, Tom, in the future. And what we need to be thinking about is evangelism happens online, and evangelism happens through your personhood online and maybe your personal life. And then there's this discipleship piece that starts happening in church through corporate worship. And it's, again, digital evangelism and digital church is not replacing the brick and mortar. And that's really key for leaders who are shaking right now, or maybe really close to turning this podcast off right now, to understand. But I would be thinking about, how can this AI technology help us drive people down our funnel in a way that's leading to real people, but is giving back time to the preachers to preach, the teachers to teach, and the disciplers to disciple without having to worry about the systems. And so it's not replacing jobs, Tom. I think I've done a good job, and there's been a lot of people who have been doing a good job of writing, and the good job I did is reading, not writing, but writing on AI is not going to replace your job. Maybe for some people it will. It's going to give you time back. It's going to make you more effective. There are things that AI is going to be able to help you with, where maybe you get 30% of your time back. And for pastors, teachers, and preachers, 30% of your time back to be able to do more of what you were called to do is absolutely incredible. And so maybe that 30% is what allows you to start doing more evangelism online, creating vertical videos, doing these things that you wouldn't have been able to do before. And so I think the future, Tom, isn't like this maybe new thing on, new social media platform, or this new, whatever. I think it's mostly about leveraging AI to give you time back so that your time is better spent, more rich, more effective. You have that extra coffee with somebody, you have that extra conversation, you text those 5 people you weren't able to text before, and you just double and triple down on what you were put on this earth to do, which is pastor and shepherd people, lead people, disciple people. And that's what AI, I think, for the church is going to best help us do.
Dave Adamson has said this a few different times on Twitter, but he just said, never have I met an online pastor who is looking to replace the church.
Yeah.
And you just said it so succinctly too, is the simple fact, the fear that online and AI stuff is going to replace what we do in person, or that element of church. It's not going to happen, and nor is it anybody's desire to do that. We're using AI as tools to help us do ministry more effectively. We're not doing ministry the same way we did back in the 1970s or 80s or 90s. If we were, we'd be a dying church or no church at all.
That's right.
So the reality is we have to adapt. AI provides it. Me as a writer, I like to write a lot, and sometimes I go through writer's block. Well, I've pulled up AI and just said introductory paragraph on this topic, and I didn't use it verbatim, but I used some of the things. I was like, oh, that's a good point, and then I just built off of it. It's kind of like my help, and it saved me time. So I agree with you 100%.
Yep, that's right. Let it be additive and let it speed up processes for you is what I would say. That's what I see the future being.
That's awesome. Dude, we could talk for a really long time about this. And unfortunately, I have a time constraint, but I want you to still talk about the Social Media Church podcast a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about that, and what do you guys have coming up in the near future?
Yeah, all good stuff there. Yeah, so we've recently added on a 3rd co-host, and usually the episodes now are some combination of any 2 of us or 1 of us. But DK Hammond is the 3rd co-host, and he is in the creative communications department at Embassy City Church in Texas, in the DFW area, and Irving, I think, is where they are. Anyways, DK is incredible. And what's next for Social Media Church and what we're doing? First of all, you can go to socialmedia.church, find out everything that we're doing. But it started, if you're not familiar with the podcast, it started in 2013, I believe, with the founder, DJ Chuang. And DJ is one of the most incredible leaders in this space, has been for a long time. He then passed that podcast off to Nils Smith, and Nils ran with it. And that's when Jay hopped on, and there's been a couple co-hosts before me, but Nils has been the constant. And it's always been, this is how DJ started it, and it's how we've continued it. It's a conversation about technology, about social media, about online discipleship, about anything online as it pertains to the church, and conversations with leaders in the space, which is why we had Tom on the podcast. And we are always trying to connect our audience with these voices. And really, Tom, how we see it is, pastors and church leaders and communications directors are listening to the podcast because they either don't know where to start, which is where I was back in 2013 when I started in ministry, or they don't have time to do all the research. And so what we pride ourselves in is being able to give these 30-minute, 40-hour-long episodes that concisely and comprehensively cover topics that church leaders are interested in, that might be a fit for them, that might not be a fit for them, but they wouldn't have had the time to research it or look into it for themselves. And or maybe they just hadn't come across these people before. I'm sure there's people on our podcast that didn't know who Tom was, that have now given him a follow on Twitter and are listening to the things that he says. And so it's really just this melting pot of ideas and people that we want to keep the online church leader space connected, resourcing the rest of the church. And so that's really what the podcast is. We talk about a lot more things than just social media, but social media is a good guide for the things that we talk about. And yeah, I mean, coming up, I've been seeing Nils has recorded a lot of solo episodes here recently. I don't know where all these people are coming from, and I don't remember her name, so I hesitate to tell this story. But there was somebody in our group chat with DK, Nils, and myself that none of us had heard of, that DK was like, she is crushing marketing, like church marketing on social media. And so what did we do? We reached out to her and we're like, hey, we have a podcast. We'd love to have you on the podcast. And so having the podcast is also just a good excuse to talk to people we want to meet and, give a platform to and give leverage to, who are doing really incredible things for the kingdom. But because the internet is so big and the church is so big and there's so much work to be done in terms of accomplishing the Great Commission, we don't always know who all the names are. And so we like to pride ourselves in saying that our podcast is one of those sources that's going to help connect you to voices you might not have heard of or know. And I'm sure that if you scroll through the 300 plus episodes that we have, there's probably some familiar names on there as well. But yeah, that's what we have going on.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love your podcast is great. It's one of the top podcasts, especially in regards to digital ministry, that I look forward to. I subscribe to it on Apple, and so I'll include all his links on that, and for you to subscribe to it too if you're not already doing it. They post, you're posting pretty regularly, like once a week right now, right? That's
the goal is to have an episode out every Friday. So awesome. Sometimes we hit it, sometimes we don't. But as far as the eye can see right now, we'll hit it for the next couple months. So.
Yeah, and that's great because not a lot of podcasts dump on Fridays. So you can make that your Friday podcast to listen to every Friday. Listen to the guys.
Right. Yeah, thanks for evangelizing it.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, it was great having you on. I wish I could have you on more, but I am going to have you on again. And awesome. I got you on before I got Nils on. So there, you're one up on Nils.
Yeah, I'm number one. So definitely tune into Nils' episode whenever that comes. So that he can, redeem everything that I just said. But yeah, thanks, Tom. It's been a pleasure.
That's awesome. Well, thanks. Hey, man, have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
All right. So what did you think? What stood out to you? It was great talking to Aaron. Again, I really can't wait to meet him in real life and actually see how much taller he is than I am. It's just great to hear about his Oregon State Beavers experience, to see about his ministry path, and to see what he's doing now. I'm really excited about that. And again, he's got a great podcast. So if you've never checked it out, check it out. I've got the links there. I got the show links for the specific ones he talked about. Check those out. They're great resources. Him and Nils are fantastic people who really have a heart for the big church, the Big C church. And so if you got questions, if you got thoughts, put them in the comment section below or put them on Twitter. I've got Aaron's Twitter handle in there. Click on his link. Ask him a question. You can ask me a question at TA Pounder. That's my Twitter handle. We'd love to carry this conversation online so we can encourage each other and spur each other on in this online environment. All right, so that wraps it up for another episode of the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, subscribe to it. Click on the subscribe button. It's on Apple. It's on Google. It's on YouTube. It's at the Church Digital as well. There's lots of places where you can go and click on it and subscribe to it. Go subscribe to it so you can get these every time they come out. All right, heroes, well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of the week, and until next time, have a great one.